Yeah, I would like to, we're hearing a lot about what is driving the costs. I talked about the Superfund premium. I think from the testimony, we may not have the same name for it, but it's falling under the same umbrella of what I was talking about. Let me just kind of dig deeper on this remediation plan holdup, Mr. Fox, that you've talked about. Is it a matter of the best strategy to clean up a particular site? Is it arguing over the best way to do it? We've heard it's not really arguing over who's going to pay for it, or is that the holdup, or is it the science has not been done, or I don't know. Point to one or two or three things in this process that we could change that would make this go faster.
So first of all, I want to say I don't think the holdup is who's responsible for it.
Okay.
That's not the holdup in my mind.
Okay.
I'm going to echo what Mr. Riddell said, and that is there are very known ways to evaluate what the risk is at the site and how to clean them up. Some sites are more complicated than others, but those general principles that I mentioned about knowing who's exposed, knowing what they're exposed to, and eliminating those pathways, I don't want to use the wrong term, but it's not rocket science.
Right.
We've been doing this for a long time. What happens is the process is so cumbersome. The reports, the back
Meetings.
and forth on scientific stuff. It's not a science project where you have to study every molecule. You can get there much faster, get a remedy selected. And by the way, Superfund contains a fail-safe because the statute requires that every 5 years the remedy that is selected and implemented is reviewed to see whether it is protective of the environment. So let's get it done through a much more streamlined remedy selection process. That is the major holdup as I see it.
Okay. Mr. Riddell, I'm going to ask you, I'm assuming that you've done cleanups for Superfund sites and cleanups for private or state level cleanups. Okay.
Right.
So I want to contrast those. When you do a cleanup, say for a state or maybe for a private entity, and you don't have this cumbersome process, would you agree with Mr. Fox that some of the things that are thrown into the Superfund process? So how does that work in a different when you're doing it for the state or for a private entity? You mentioned a site in West Virginia that's a Superfund site you're getting ready to do at the McElroy mine. Is that correct?
That's not a Superfund site, but I have a better example.
Okay.
The site we closed on in 2022 in Indiana was a Superfund site. If we'd have done that cleanup under the voluntary program of Indiana versus how we did it under the Superfund program, just my consulting costs alone and to some extent my legal costs, probably 2 times more doing it on the Superfund site than if we were in doing that same work under a voluntary program. And as Rob said, I mean, it's almost like, when you have your little kid anxious to go out and play, when we have a site, we want to clean it up. We want to get started with the remedial investigation and get to the RA. And Superfund, you got to stop. You got to do your QAP. You got to do that. You get so many extra plans that you have to do. A QAP, by way of example, quality assurance project plan, where you go through basically a real thorough analysis of the laboratories that you're going to use, the laboratory you're going to use to test the groundwater, the dirt, and things. And it's it's a very detailed process. It's an expensive process. There's smart people involved. But we're using EPA certified labs. So, on the volunteer
So they're already
side,
certified.
we're already using an EPA certified lab, but I have to do this extra level of detail to satisfy the Superfund requirements. That's one small example, but it just compounds. It compounds. Instead of getting focused on what are the issues, how do we deal with them, and how do we clean them up to be protective of human health and environment, and then integrated development, we're still in this process of this plan, that plan, this plan.
Right. So, I mean, it begs the question, if you're using an EPA-certified lab, why do you have to keep going back and recertifying?
Beg my questions, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Fox, let me ask you from the folks that live in and around Superfund sites. They have great economic development promise, in my view, because they are clean. You don't have, it's much easier for a developer in some cases to come in because the work's already been done. What do you see when you go into different communities about the restlessness of why is it taking so long? not adding the economics onto the health issues that are sometimes associated with these sites. I mean, I think what we're doing is we're stymieing communities from being able to have confidence that they can, A, redevelop or be living in a healthy community.
I agree with you 100%. I see it over and over again. Communities are frustrated because the potential exists for a win-win-win. Redevelopment of the site, protective of their human health and the environment, and the longer it goes on, they become distrustful.
Right.
They become distrustful of EPA, they become distrustful of the private parties who are doing the work, and it feeds upon itself. Speeding up the process will get this back to productive use and eliminate the exposure of these communities, and they will eliminate that distrust.
Right. Thank you. I wanted to ask an additional question. On the train derailment in Ohio several years ago, we had testimony in this committee about EPA's role. We also heard, again, delays in cleaning it up. And part of the problem, from my understanding, was that certain states decided, even though they had certified, probably EPA-certified toxic folks that could take the toxic material into their businesses, that's their business, that certain states said, we don't want that in our state. I believe Michigan, if I'm recalling correctly, was one of the states that said this. Have you run into this type of issue as you're remediating in either one of your, either you, Mr. Fox, or Mr. Riddell, where you've had a refusal to accept toxic materials that you're taking? I'm assuming you do this. Take it to a EPA certified site. Is this an issue?
My experience is I have not run into that. If we're going to an off-site location, in whatever state it is, that location is permitted to accept those hazardous wastes, and they have a permitted facility that's either a landfill, an incinerator, or whatever it might be. And so, you know, they have the permit, you have the right DOT permits, and you have the right transporter. I have not seen an instance in my experience where anything's been denied because we're using all the proper protocol.
Right, that's what I thought.
So.
What about Mr. Fox? Do you recall that?
There's two issues. One is there's a limited number of hazardous waste disposal sites, so you don't have this great selection. I suspect that a lot of that was community opposition, more.
It was.
Yeah, that was, we don't want that. The facility is properly permitted to accept it.
Right.
But the community says, I don't want that waste. You're taking it off of there and putting it into my community. I'm assuming that was probably what was behind it.
Yeah, and then it kind of blows up into a
Political issue
political
as opposed to a regulatory issue.
yeah. I mean, I just hope these are professionals that are going to the letter of the law to be able to dispose of this and actually creating a business model that can help you and help all these other sites. It was rather, I think, kind of shocking, not just to me, but to them, that this was going on when these sites had been there forever, the cleanup sites. But
I mean, trust me, to get a RCRA permit for a hazardous waste disposal facility is a rigorous process.
Right, my understanding as well. All right, further questions? I would like to thank the witnesses and all of my colleagues for participation. Senators who wish to submit written questions for the record have until 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 23rd to do so. The witnesses' responses to those questions are due back to the committee no later than close of business Wednesday, May the 7th, and will be submitted for the record. I would like to say just in closing that I think, first of all, this has been an excellent hearing because you're all so knowledgeable on the issue, having lived it. But I think we have good bipartisan agreement here that the system is broken. We've put more money into this recently, and we want to see it result in completions of these projects as much as you do. So let's work together to try to find a solution. Hopefully we can ameliorate some of the problems that have been identified today. So thank you very much.